Welcome to the podcast, How to Be Well and Strong. I'm your host, Jacqueline Genova, and I'm excited to have you join me as I speak with some of the leading figures in the fields of wellness, integrative medicine, and mental health, as we discover what it truly means to be well and strong in both body and mind. Get ready to be empowered, inspired, and motivated about being an advocate for your own health. Welcome to today's episode. We are speaking with Dr. Nicole Huffman about an area that I think many of you will find incredibly interesting, and that is the impact of our emotions and subconscious beliefs on our overall health. Dr. Nicole Huffman is a naturopathic medical doctor, and her passion is finding the root cause of her patients' imbalances, not just solving the symptom picture. She believes the body has the ability to heal itself given the correct personalized treatment plan and after restoring the basic determinants of health. While her home is in Colorado, she advises remotely all over the world. She has a podcast called Coffee with the Docs and an online membership where she empowers her audience on how to thrive. Dr. Huffman, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
We were just briefly chatting, but I love your podcast. I need to be on it at some point in time.
Yes, you do.
We have been chatting for the past, 2 or 3 years, and now I finally get to chat with you one-on-one. So I'm very excited just to see your face and also get into this topic.
Yeah, me too. This will be great.
I have recently become intrigued with this field of psychoneuroimmunology. It took me a while before I could actually pronounce it, or the association of stress with the development of disease. So I'm really just excited to pick your brain on the significance of emotional health when it comes to the physical health of our bodies.
Yeah.
So let's start from the beginning. What are subconscious beliefs?
Yeah. So I will say, I'm not a psychologist or psychiatrist or anything like that, right? So I really even feel like in naturopathic medical school, we got such little training on the emotional health. It was more like, if someone is depressed or anxious, what herb would you give them, right? Or what nutrient might they be depleted in? But I just feel like as a whole, this whole area of emotional well-being and health is not really covered by a doctor. It's not really looked at in medical health. And yet I find it to be the biggest root. So just wanted to kind of preface that with, when I'm giving definitions of subconscious beliefs, it's really coming from my training through mentors and through neuroemotional technique, which we can talk about, and EFT, et cetera. Not so much like the, what a psychiatrist or a psychologist would say, right? But from what I understand, subconscious beliefs are basically how your body operates 98 to 99% of the time, right? So it's kind of scary how often humans operate from their subconscious brain. And your subconscious brain is really built from, we could go from the time you were in utero, right? I mean, it's how you've been operating your whole life. And most children up until the age of 8 are really still living in their subconscious brain. That's how they're reacting and responding to the world. So it's made up of these beliefs, right? So let's give a couple of examples of what a subconscious belief might be. It could be I'm only loved when I do something good, right? That could be a subconscious belief. Or when I'm sick, I get attention, right? And you can kind of see how if someone is operating and living day to day from a belief like that, what is their health going to look like? Especially if it is a subconscious belief, like when I'm sick, I get attention, or when I'm sick, I get love, then I bet their body's not thriving. I bet their body isn't in optimal health because that's not how their body would perceive getting love or attention. And we have to understand that our subconscious brain is not like this. It's not like this evil thing that's out to make us not feel good or live our best life or not have abundance. It really is trying to keep us safe. I mean, that's the whole basis of the subconscious brain. So it's more like, how can we work with these belief systems that we might be able to come up with or find in our sessions? And how can we create safety so that we can maybe change some of these belief systems, and just make our brain feel safer? So that was a very long answer to your question.
I didn't realize that children live in that subconscious state up until the age of 8. That's fascinating.
They do. And so that's where there's all this like different types of parenting. And like, I'm a very new mom. So, even thinking about that and like discipline and all of that is like, still overwhelming at this point with my 5-month-old. But it is, they're like sponges. They just absorb everything. And so it's not to say that, there's probably no like perfect, like, I think you can have the most perfect childhood of your dreams and there's still going to be like weird belief systems because we're human and that's just like what happens. But yeah, they're sponges and they make everything. They're like little narcissists. They really make everything about them. So even if whatever you're doing with your partner has nothing to do with them, if they can hear and absorb it, they're probably making it about themselves. So it's really interesting.
And to your point too about, even a child in utero, for example, I remember reading somewhere, I forget where, but that a mother's thoughts while she's pregnant can actually impact the psychology of the unborn child. And that could be like, even just in terms of stress response or anxiety. I'm sure you've heard of that. Could you elaborate on that a bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we have to remember that emotions are energy, right? Emotions and stress, like everything has an energetic imprint. So that little being inside of you feels everything, right? I mean, they can feel all of your different thoughts and emotions. And so, yeah, when we do NET, which is neuroemotional technique, and uses muscle testing, and we're always asking, whatever this trigger or stressful event is that's happening now, how far in your past does it go back? And there are times where it will muscle test back in utero, first trimester, second trimester, third trimester. And then we ask the body, right? Because everything is stored in your nervous system. Okay, like what was going on? What was happening, do you think, with your mom when you were second trimester? And there's almost always something. Oh, that's when my dad lost his job. That's when they moved. That's when they found out they were having me because I was a surprise. Or that was, all these different things. That's when my mom's mom died, right? Like there seems to always be something, and that can have an impact on the fetus, no doubt.
I recently just became, I guess, even aware that muscle testing was even a thing. Could you explain what exactly that is to listeners?
Yeah, definitely. Muscle testing is one of my favorite tools. I really like to say that it's not something I think you should Google because one, Google hates everything alternative and holistic medicine anyways, but they really hate muscle testing. And
so true.
So, it'll be like quack, whatever. And just like any doctor or anything, there's going to be better muscle testing doctors than others. There's going to be ones that you drive with more than other muscle testers. But the basis of it is that we're using any muscle in your body that is strong, right? So meaning if you had a hurt shoulder, I probably wouldn't use your arm, right? Because your shoulder isn't strong. And so it's going to be weak and I'm not going to get a good test. But if you have a sound shoulder, we usually use the arm muscle. And whether that arm is strong or has a little wobble or what we call weak is going to give us information when we're asking the right questions to your nervous system. So there's a whole bunch of different systems based inside muscle testing, but essentially we say it's like using, like your arm is kind of like the keyboard to the computer. Like we're asking, what is going on with this body? So of everything, if we were muscle testing you, Jacqueline, of everything that's going on with Jacqueline, I like to use muscle testing to ask your nervous system specifically, of everything that's going on, where does your body want to start? What is the priority? Is this an organ system? Is this a gland? Is this a food you're eating? Is this a chronic infection, heavy metal toxicity? Is this an emotional issue, right? And your nervous system is going to tell me. And that's what's so cool because we can have 10 different women that come in, let's say with a stomach problem. And as a functional doctor, but really any doctor, we're just going to guess. We're going to say, okay, based on your symptoms, this is what we think. We think, maybe you should change your diet. Maybe we need to do some gut healing protocol. What's your antibiotic history? Blah, 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 right? But if we can use muscle testing, we're actually asking your body, what is the deal with your stomach? not the 9 other women I saw with different stomach issues. So people leave with a more individualized protocol based on what their body is saying.
Interesting. Is there, I guess, like an appropriate age to have that done?
You can have muscle testing done at any age. I was actually just muscle testing my nephew over the weekend, and he's 3.5. And as long as they can hold their arm up, and if it's like a baby, we'll use a surrogate test, meaning like we'll have the mom hold the baby and then I'll use the mom's arm. So you can really muscle test at any age.
Super cool. Let's say someone already knows they have subconscious beliefs that need to be changed, right? And they read all these things online. Everyone's saying, oh, do all these different rituals in the morning when you wake up or meditate. How do we change those beliefs?
Yeah, definitely. So I think there's a lot of different great tools out there. I find it hard to change a subconscious belief with the conscious mind, right? I think it's good to be aware of it. I think that's where that conscious mind comes in and is saying like, okay, I think this is a subconscious belief I have, right? Anytime we're the one thinking about it, that becomes a conscious thought, right? So, but then I think beyond that, there are so many great tools. So I think meditation can be a great tool. Emotional freedom technique can be a great tool. I personally, of all tools, love neuro-emotional technique. You do need somebody who is certified or trained in NET to work on you, but there's people everywhere. I like to do it remotely as well. And we're basically asking the body. So let's say, like you said, somebody knows I have this belief. Let's just stick with the one that I've been saying examples of, like, I tend to get more love when I'm sick, right? We can use muscle testing and neuro-emotional technique to go back into time and ask the body when this belief system first started, where it came from. And once we can find out that memory or that time where it first came from, then we can clear it. And clearing it is really breathing into it. We use acupressure points, tapping on the spine. And it, like I said, it always looks so like kind of woo-woo, but the brain scans, they've done all these awesome different brain scans before and after receiving an NET clearing, and the brain changes. It's so cool. And I just see it change. I've seen it change in so many people, and their life changes because of it, right? Because even in relationships, like I feel like, like I'm deserving of a healthy, loving relationship is like another big one. We see people and like they get the same relationship over and over again. And it's like the same person, but just showing up in a different person's clothing, right? Like, but the same type of relationship, because they don't inherently believe that they deserve love or a healthy love. And so clearing that on someone, then we see them like bring in this like happy, healthy relationship. So you can use it in so many different regards and different ways, but that's my favorite way of clearing it. Now, if you're someone who's like, I kind of want to work on this on myself first, it's like you're going to have to use what works for you, whether it's like journaling, maybe you're meditating and asking like where this first time, this original event came up for you. I think there's many ways to access it. That's just my favorite way.
I love that. I started incorporating into my morning routine, just saying like biblical affirmations over myself. So I'm Christian, and that my faith is obviously a huge, plays a huge role in my life. But that has really been life-changing. And I say them out loud every single morning. I'll like alternate between a few. But I also recall reading that like within the first 20 minutes when you wake up, that's when your subconscious is most impressionable. So that's why it's so important that you guard that time, right? That we don't like just go over and check our phones or look at a screen. Like you really are present and do something in that time that is going to serve you, during that day. And then obviously in your greater life.
Absolutely. I would say we're in and out of hypnosis like many different times a day. And then when you're in a hypnosis state, you really are able to shift those subconscious beliefs. And the biggest states for that are right when you wake up in the morning and right before you go to bed at night. So it's kind of why those times are like times that people meditate or, like you were saying, do like some biblical affirmations or do a gratitude journal or something, right? Because those times of day tend to be really potent for change.
Going back to the comment on like the scans and seeing that those areas have cleared with folks who do this practice, I also remember reading that in Chinese medicine, emotions are narrowed down to 5 basic feelings that are each associated with a corresponding element and organ in the body. So like anger is associated with the liver and fear with the kidney. Have you seen that come up in your scans, and what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So with NET or neuroemotional technique, we use that. We have a master chart that we use, and every organ system has, well, we have a whole bunch more emotions than 5, but it's like anywhere from, and if we incorporate some other systems as well, there can be anywhere from 55 emotions based on different elements. And so we can get real specific where it's like not just anger, right? It might be like irrationality, or it might be resentment, right? Like we can really fine tune it to these deeper emotions. But yeah, every system in the body, every organ system holds different emotions. So like the lungs hold grief, and the heart can really hold vulnerability or feeling lost. And so I do think that if people kind of are struggling with a certain organ system, to look at those emotions for sure too. Like we always think of like the angry alcoholic, right? Well, that makes sense. Alcohol really affects the liver, and that's where we see, that irritability and stuff too in the liver as well. So yeah, I definitely use that system a ton.
It's also kind of like a chicken and the egg issue, but how can you determine, or perhaps you can through muscle testing, that those subconscious beliefs that we don't necessarily want are from, let's say, like a hormonal imbalance, for example? Because I know that there's certain things, OCD, for example, can also, be an underlying hormonal imbalance within the body. So how do you recognize that?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And that's through that we do use muscle testing for that. So we're really asking how much of this is chemical and how much of this is emotional. And chemical, for my definition, chemical is anything that's in the body that shouldn't be there, like a chronic infection, a toxicity, maybe a food you're eating, maybe a hormonal imbalance, or anything that needs to be in the body that isn't: herbs, nutrients, homeopathics, flower essences, supplements of different, and then maybe foods and stuff too, right? So we're really saying, like, if somebody's coming in, let's say with a hormonal imbalance, I'm asking the body, and I do specialty testing. I'm not, doing like just muscle testing all the time. I really do find that combining labs and muscle testing gives me the best results personally with my patients. But we could do, let's say, a Dutch test and look at the hormones. And then we can also do a muscle test and ask the body how much of this hormonal imbalances is from subconscious issues, or how much of it is really like we just need to balance this body in a different way. And I really do believe that there are multiple ways to get to a result, right? I mean, we can, you could see me and we could do it one way, and you could see another practitioner and they could do it another way. And we're both probably going to get to that same result, but just using different paths. One might be faster than the other. One might be more uncomfortable than the other. One might affect other areas of your life, right? If we're doing more emotional work, because I do feel like that affects so many more areas than just, let's say, just hormones. But I really do believe most times it's also a combo. It's lifestyle changes supporting the body in some way chemically, whether that be through a supplement, and then also doing emotional work.
That all makes sense. And are there specific emotions that tend to have a more significant impact on the body?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I feel like, so there's a chart, and I'll get you the name after. And if you want to put it in your show notes or something, I just can't come up with it off the top of my head, but there's a chart of consciousness based off emotions. So some of the emotions that have the lowest consciousness, I think those are the most impactful. And I know some of those are like shame, right? Like shame is very low consciousness, and guilt. Yeah. And actually anger, even though that can be a tough emotion for people, it's actually higher on the consciousness level than like just shame. So I do feel like there are different ones that impact the body more, and maybe it might take some more time to get up that scale, if we're going to use that scale as an example, than others. Yeah. Like if you think of really low vibration emotions are like sadness, right? Like anger has some anger has some vibrancy to it, right? I mean, you have to have some energy to be angry. And so that might be an easier thing to clear than, let's say, like I mentioned before, like a shame. So I do think that there is some validity to that.
Have you noticed like certain emotions more common in certain diseases? So for example, I recall reading somewhere, it was like this chart, not the one you're referring to, but it outlined women who develop breast cancer in their right breast. It outlined the traits of that woman and a lot of the characteristics. And it was like unforgiveness, bitterness, just really interesting things that, again, were associated with women who are more likely to develop breast cancer on the right side. Is there any like science to that?
Yeah, I learned from my mentor years ago, and he gave me a chart, and it was based off of Dr. Hamer's research, and he's a German doctor in cancer. And there are different emotions and different situations that cause different types of cancer. So sort of what you were saying too. And it is so fascinating. It was something similar to that too. Like, oh, the right breast meant this, the left breast meant that. I know skin cancer was like a feeling of like disgust within yourself. So I do feel like there are certain emotions or different situations that will present more as disease. Autoimmune diseases almost always have a trauma root. Like I really don't think you can treat autoimmune without doing some emotional work. They tend to have some sort of trauma. So I've seen autoimmune go into remission without emotional work, but then I see it come back and it's just sort of lingering. So I think you really need to like double down on that. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, no, that's really, really interesting. And also too, I mean, perhaps this might be something that someone could rule out with talking to someone, but how do people deal with intrusive thoughts or emotional triggers? So let's say someone's working through their subconscious beliefs, they're doing their EFT technique, they're working with a practitioner like you, but they still deal with these intrusive thoughts on a daily basis. How do we address those?
Yeah, I think intrusive thoughts can be a number of things. We have to remember like your gut health plays a huge role in your neurotransmitter production. Neurotransmitters are, just to give a brief example, are basically they're messengers, and a lot of them can impact how you feel on a daily basis. So like serotonin makes you feel happy and safe and calm. Dopamine might be like more of a motivation neurotransmitter. It kind of gets you up and gets you going, right? If these neurotransmitters are off, we can definitely see intrusive thoughts. And if our gut or our digestive tract is inflamed, or it's dealing with foods we shouldn't be eating, or a chronic infection like fungus or parasites or bacteria overgrowth, or maybe some toxicity, maybe we're not detoxing effectively, all of that is going to affect your mind, right? Because your gut is your second brain. And 90% of your serotonin, and I think that they're even estimating maybe higher lately, is produced in your gut. So if our gut health isn't intact, then we could be doing all of the EFT and NET and all the things, but we have to remember that's why it comes hand in hand, right? So my colleagues and I operate off the triad of health. The triad is looking at the body emotionally, chemically, which we've been talking about, sort of anything in the body that shouldn't be there, anything that needs to be in the body that isn't, and then the structural component of the triad. We have to address all three. So generally, if we're on top of two, let's say the chemical and the emotional, usually that structure one will come in, like get in line a little bit faster. But if we're just all doing all emotional work and we're ignoring these other two things, we're only going to get a third of the way there, right? So I do feel like it's an all systems approach. And especially when I think of like intrusive thoughts or anything going on with the brain, I definitely think about the gut, and that treating like naturopathic medicine is like treat the hole in the middle first. It's like a big thing. The hole in the middle is our gut. So it definitely has to be addressed.
Yeah. And not to digress too much, but going back to gut health, right? Obviously nutrition plays a huge factor in our digestive health. Is there anything that you would recommend like completely restricting from your diet if you're dealing with, again, those intrusive thoughts or, managing your emotions?
Yeah, I tend to get rid of gluten. That's like a big one. Mostly because and again, there's like sort of this argument now, like, is it really gluten or is it the glyphosate? And it's like, I don't know if it matters. Just don't eat it.
It's not pure gluten. Just
yeah,
don't eat it.
I know.
Yep.
It's like, I don't know. Just don't. I tend to see gluten and grains in general cause a lot of issues in the gut. And I've had patients who have come in with anxiety, and all we've done is remove gluten and they feel better. And they never had any gut symptoms to like, they would not, like if they ate gluten, they never felt bloated or had like weird poops or anything like that. Right. It was all presenting in their brain. So I think gluten's a big one. I think seed oils and vegetable oils are a big one. Dyes, like any of these artificial sweeteners.
What about caffeine?
Yeah, caffeine, I think it's really dependent on the person. And I have some very close colleagues who are, think absolutely no caffeine. And I'm really on the fence with that one. I think it really depends on the person. I've seen some people really not be that like too affected by it. And other ones, it really does seem like we need to restrict it and they feel a little bit more sense of calm.
Have you read, I'm sure you've heard of this, The Body Keeps the Score?
Is it a book?
You haven't? You would love it. It's an incredible book. It essentially describes how overwhelming experiences affect the development of the brain, the mind, and body awareness. And they look at people who went to war and experienced PTSD. And it's just, really fascinating. But again, it's just all about, how our body stores those emotions and how to let that go.
Cool,
Aside from muscle testing, are there any other complementary modalities to help with that release of emotions?
Yeah, I feel like it's sometimes it's just taking time to like be with them. So whether that's like, I find a lot of solace in nature. We sort of live on a ranch that's like surrounded by nature. So like for me,
the dream.
Yeah, for me, like just being outside and like, I have horses and I'm like just being with them is like really healing on so many levels. I think meditation, I think slowing down is just huge. We're just in this go, 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 have to be productive life and world. And I think just like stepping back from that is huge. I mentioned EFT and that there is a lot of free stuff on that. I think you could go to like emotionalfreedomtechnique.com or something. And they do give a lot of like free tutorials. And then there's people who are really well trained in it that I think are worth doing a session with or something. And then, like I mentioned, the NET. But journaling I think has been really helpful for people. I think you kind of got to find like what your thing is, like what helps you and make time for it every day.
It's a holistic approach, right? There's not one sure way. It's a bunch of different things.
Yeah, definitely.
I love that. Well, Dr. Nicole, this has been wonderful. I'm so excited to share this with listeners. I know it's going to help so many people. Where can listeners find you?
Yeah. So my website is just drnicolehuffman.com. And then I'm pretty active on Instagram, and that's just Dr. Nicole NMD, like naturopathic medical doctor. I think that's pretty much it. I don't do the TikTok thing. Can't do it. Just haven't made it over there. Don't blame you. I'm like, haven't made it over to that side. Can only do so much social. So those are, I would say, like the two big places. And then my podcast that I do with my best friend, Dr. Abby, called Coffee with the Docs. And we drop episodes like every 2 weeks. And that's been really fun too.
Such a good one. I love that. I will include all of those in the show notes. And my last question for you, Dr. Nicole, is what does being well and strong mean to you?
Oh, I love that question. Yeah, I would say for me, well and strong is like feeling resilient and feeling like, so strong is so interesting to me. Oh my gosh, you're going to be like, this is the longest answer ever.
No, I love it.
I was a strength coach for many years before. And I was in med school too. And that was my profession up until med school and through. Yeah. So strong has always meant to me like, squatting, deadlifting. And like, I do think there's a lot of validity in that. So I tend to first think like physically, like, feeling well, like you can, and strong, like being able to lift and be strong. But really it's like changed over the years. And I feel like feeling strong mentally, feeling unshakable, feeling resilient in the face of stress. Like that, I feel like is more what that means to me now. And it is a lot easier to be strong mentally when you feel well. Yep. So I think those things, like those two go hand in hand.
That's my favorite question to ask every single person that comes on the show, because they're all
different.
Such beautiful answers.
That's awesome.
All different. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much again for your time, for all that you do. And I'm really excited to share this with listeners.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And thanks for all the content you put out too. It's great.
I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you would like to support the show, please subscribe, leave a rating, and share it with others. Be sure to visit wellandstrong.com to access notes from the show and to stay current with new content. I'm so grateful you joined me. Be well and be strong.